1. We're checking out this absolutely gorgeous 1966 Chevy C20 that's popped up on Craigslist for $12,000. And let me tell you, this is one clean example of classic American iron. What we've got here is a true survivor camper special with just 85K miles on the clock. And being from Montana, you know this truck hasn't seen the rust issues that plague so many others. The sellers being straight up about this being an unmolested original, which is getting harder and harder to find these days. Under the hood, we're looking at what's probably a 327 V8, though the seller's honest about not being 100% sure, paired with a 4-speed manual featuring that classic granny first gear. And get this, it'll cruise at 70 miles per hour without breaking a sweat. That's impressive for a workhorse this age. The current owner has done some solid maintenance work. New power steering conversion, fresh rubber all around, new gas tank, windshield, battery, carb, and even California-style mirrors. Plus, it's got those dual saddle tanks, super practical for long hauls. For $12K, considering today's classic truck market and how clean this example appears to be, it's actually pretty fair pricing. The fact that it's a running, driving example with a clean title and these recent updates makes it even more appealing. I've got to say, folks, if you're in the market for a classic C20 that hasn't been butchered or modified beyond recognition, this Montana survivor deserves a serious look. These trucks are only original once, and this one seems to have been treated with respect throughout its life. 2. We're looking at something pretty interesting. A 1978 Dodge D100 short box that's got some serious character for $9,500. Let's be real here. This isn't your average work truck. Someone's put some love into this slant 6, building it 40 over with a cam, and they've got the paperwork to prove it. That's huge. They've topped it with an Offenhauser 4-barrel intake and a 500 CFM Holley carb, plus split dual exhaust. That's a pretty sweet setup for these old slant 6s. The transmission is that bulletproof 833 new process 4-speed, which is seriously tough and matches this truck's character perfectly. It's sitting on some aluminum Ultra wheels with fresh rubber, which is always good news for any potential buyer. Now let's talk honestly about the body. It's showing its age with some oxidation in the yellow paint. It'll need a good buffing to bring back the shine, but hey, that's pretty typical for these old Dodges. The seller's being upfront about it, which I appreciate. One thing that caught my eye, that 3,000 mile odometer reading. Given it's a 78, that's likely 103,000 or 203,000, so you'll want to verify the actual mileage. It's running manual brakes and steering, so it'll give you that pure old-school truck feel. No power assists here. The new stereo is a nice modern touch, though. For $9,500, you're getting a modified classic with some desirable performance upgrades. These D100S are getting harder to find, especially ones that haven't been completely worn out or modified beyond recognition. 3. Let's talk about this 1977 Ford F-250 that's caught my eye on Craigslist for $11,500. What we've got here is a pretty interesting setup, an extended cab short box F-250, which is a less common configuration for these old Fords. And this isn't just any F-250. It's packing that monster 460 big block V8 paired with a 4-speed manual transmission. That's a powertrain combo that'll definitely get your attention. The truck's sitting high with a lift kit, and it's rocking 4-wheel drive, perfect for those who want their classic truck with some serious presence. With 101,010 miles showing, it's got some life experience, but that's not necessarily a bad thing for these old workhorses. Now, the seller's keeping it pretty brief in their description, but they're noting that the interior is in good shape, which is actually pretty rare for these late 70s Fords. They usually show their age pretty badly inside. The red paint appears to be holding up based on the good condition rating. At $11,500, you're in the ballpark for a lifted big block F-250 from this era, especially with the extended cab configuration. These trucks have been climbing in value, and finding one with the 464-speed combo that isn't completely worn out is getting tougher. Just remember, folks, with any lifted truck from this era, you'll want to check out the quality of the lift installation and make sure all the 4x4 components are working properly. Also, that 460 is known for its thirst, so be ready for some serious fuel bills. 4. Let's check out this 1972 GMC Sierra C10 that's up for grabs at $8,500. I've got to be straight with you. This listing is giving us some pretty basic info, but there are some important highlights worth noting. We're looking at a green Sierra with a 350 Chevy V8 under the hood. And here's the good news. The engine's been rebuilt with only about 1,200 miles on it. Plus, they've just done a transmission rebuild on that automatic, which is a significant value point right there. The odometer's showing 86,254 miles. But as with most classics of this era, take that number with a grain of salt. The seller's describing it as a good solid truck, which is important for these C10s, as they can be prone to rust issues. For $8,500, you're looking at a fair price in today's market, especially considering the fresh engine and transmission rebuilds. These early 70s GMC trucks have been steadily climbing in value, and finding one with recent mechanical work is definitely a plus. One thing I should mention, the seller's brief description and texting-only communication preference might mean you'll need some patience in getting detailed information. But hey, if you're serious about a classic C10, this could be worth investigating. These 72 GMCs share the same clean classic lines as their Chevy siblings, and with that rebuilt 350, you're getting one of the most reliable and easily serviceable powertrains ever made. 5. We're looking at a pretty interesting 1965 GMC 3/4 ton 4x4 that's listed for $5,800, and I've got to keep it real with you about this one. Let's start with the obvious. The seller's honest about listing this in fair condition, and that's important to acknowledge. It's running a 350 engine with a manual transmission, which is a solid, reliable combination when properly maintained. Now, being a 65 Model 4x4, this is definitely a desirable year for collectors and enthusiasts. These old GMCs have that classic, clean styling that just can't be replicated, and the 3/4 ton 4x4 configuration is particularly sought after. The seller's description is pretty straightforward: running good, and you can either drive as is or take to the next level. That's basically telling us this is a running project truck. At $5,800, considering the current market for classic 4x4s, this could be a decent starting point if you're looking for something to gradually restore or just use as a cool weekend driver. Being totally honest here, you should expect some work ahead. The fair condition rating suggests there are likely some issues that'll need addressing, but that's reflected in the price. These old trucks usually need attention to their suspension, brakes, and typically have some rust to deal with. 6. Let's talk about this 1972 Chevy C20 Longhorn that's up for grabs at $3,900, and I'm going to be completely straight with you about this one. Look, this is a project truck through and through, and the seller's being refreshingly honest about its condition. We're looking at a rare Longhorn model with that extra long 8.6 inches bed, which is pretty cool, but there's no sugarcoating the challenges here. The good news? The 350 V8 runs, at least at idle, with good oil pressure and normal temps, though it's got some running issues, likely carburetor related. It's paired with a 4-speed manual, which is a desirable combo. The upper body parts are reportedly solid, including the doors, window frames, and engine bay. Now let's talk about the elephant in the room, the rust. The seller's being super transparent about the extensive rust issues in the cab bottom, floors, supports, sills, and rocker panels. We're talking very rusty, their caps, not mine. And that's serious business. This isn't a weekend fix-it job. We're looking at major metalwork or replacement. With 159,543 miles showing, and an admitted rollover, this truck's seen its share of work. But here's the thing. These Longhorns are getting harder to find, and at $3,900, you're buying a piece of Chevy truck history that could be worth saving. If you're considering this as a project, be realistic. You're looking at significant investment in time and money to get it right. The seller's even suggesting an LS swap, which might not be a bad idea given the circumstances. 7. Let's dive into this absolutely wild 1985 K5 Blazer that's up for grabs at $13,500. And wow, this is not your average K5. First off, let's talk about that power plant. Someone ditched the original 305, good call, and dropped in a monster 454 big block, paired with a 4-speed manual transmission. That's a seriously potent combination that'll definitely get your attention. The 208 transfer case is handling the 4WD duties, and they've beefed up the running gear with 8-lug 1-ton axles. That's some serious hardware, folks. The upgrades don't stop there. You're looking at a 4-inch lift sitting on fresh leaf springs and shocks, rolling on 285/75R 16 Milestar Patagonia MTs with 2022 date codes. The AC's been converted to R134A, huge plus, and there's a new radiator to help keep that big block cool. Inside, it's looking fresh with newly reupholstered seats, and the seller claims the interior is in perfect condition. Now, being honest here, there is some rust present. It's a Utah truck after all. But the seller's done their homework with the magnet test, suggesting it's not structural or severe. At $13,500, considering the upgrades and current market for K5S, especially ones with big block swaps, you're in the ballpark. The 1-ton axles alone are a valuable upgrade, and that 454 4-speed combo is getting harder to find. 8. We're looking at something pretty special. A one-owner 1974 Dodge D100 Adventurer that's up for grabs at $8,250. And let me tell you, this one's got a story to tell. What makes this truck particularly interesting is its history. We're talking about an original owner vehicle, which is increasingly rare for a truck that's nearly 50 years old. It's powered by the original 318 V8 with an automatic transmission, showing 76,854 miles, which is pretty reasonable for its age. The seller's being upfront about this being a well-preserved, non-commercial use truck. No heavy hauling or towing in its past, which is exactly what you want to hear. The AC and heater are working. That's huge for a 74. And all the electrical systems are functioning properly. Now, while it's listed in excellent condition, the seller honestly notes it needs some needed attention and could use newer parts or a moderate restoration to really shine. That's fair. These old Mopars rarely come perfect after nearly 5 decades. The Adventurer trim was the upscale package for these D100S, and finding one that hasn't been worked to death is getting tough. Being sold for an elderly original owner adds a personal touch to this truck's story. At $8,250, considering it's a documented one-owner example with working AC and a clean history, you're in the right ballpark for today's market. These D100S are gaining appreciation among collectors, especially original owner examples. 9. Let's talk about this 1984 Chevy El Camino that's listed for $15,000. And I've got to be straight with you about this one. The seller's keeping it incredibly brief here, describing it as weathered with 60,190 miles and all original. That's about as bare bones as descriptions get, folks. It's rocking the V8 engine with an automatic transmission, finished in brown paint, and the seller rates it in good condition despite the weathered comment. Now let's be real here. $15,000 is asking quite a bit for a weathered 84 El Camino, even in today's market. While these business in the front, party in the back vehicles have a dedicated following, this price point would typically suggest a much more detailed presentation or a really well-preserved example. The 60K miles could be a plus if verified, but without more information about its maintenance history or specific condition details, it's hard to justify that price tag. These later El Caminos came with either a 305 or 350 V8, but the seller doesn't specify which one's under the hood. What's interesting is that 1984 was getting toward the end of El Camino production, which ended in '87, making it one of the later examples. However, for serious buyers, you'll definitely want to get a lot more information and a thorough in-person inspection. Look, if you're in the market for an El Camino, this could be worth checking out, but make sure to ask plenty of questions and maybe negotiate that price point, considering its weathered condition. 10. Let's talk about this 1974 Chevy C10 that's listed for $16,000 and I'll give you the straight scoop on what we're looking at here. This C10's rocking the classic combination of a 350 V8 paired with a 350 automatic transmission, one of the most reliable powertrains Chevy ever put together. The sellers stating both are in great shape, which is always good to hear. Inside, we've got fresh upholstery work, which is a big plus since these interiors often show their age. Another positive point is that all the gauges are working properly, something that's not always a given with these old trucks. Now let's be honest about the exterior. The red paint is described as good, but comes with a few scratches, which is pretty normal for a truck of this age. The tires are only in fair shape, so you might want to factor in some new rubber in the near future. On the mechanical side, they've done some recent brake work with new wheel cylinders, which is definitely a positive. At $16,000, we're in the upper range for a 74 C10, even in today's hot classic truck market. These trucks have seen significant value increases lately, but you'll want to inspect it thoroughly at this price point. The sellers being pretty straightforward about wanting to show the truck in person rather than negotiate through texts or emails, which suggests they're confident in its presentation. 11. Let's check out this 1970 El Camino that's up for grabs at $14,000, and there's quite a bit to unpack here. First off, we're looking at a white 70 El Camino with some serious recent work done. The sellers telling us both the engine and transmission have been rebuilt with less than 5,000 miles on them. That's a major plus. It's sitting pretty on 18-inch chrome foos wheels, and they've modernized it a bit with LED headlights and a new Viper alarm system. The sellers being refreshingly honest about the body condition. Straight but not perfect, which is exactly the kind of straightforward talk we appreciate. With 88,000 miles showing, this El Camino's got some stories to tell. They're absolutely right when they say it's basically a 70 Chevelle with a bed. That's what makes these cars so special. You get all the muscle car attitude with pickup practicality. These 1970 models are particularly desirable because they share that iconic Chevelle front-end design. At $14,000, considering the rebuilt drivetrain and current market for classic El Caminos, you're in a reasonable territory, especially if those rebuilds were done properly. The foos wheels alone are a pricey addition. One thing I appreciate is how the sellers being upfront about avoiding scams and time wasters. They clearly want serious buyers only, which is fair enough. 12. Let's dive into this 1981 K5 Blazer that's listed for $24,900, and wow, there's a lot to unpack here. First off, this is a Silverado Package K5, which was the premium trim level, and the sellers making a big point about this being a rust-free example. That's huge for these old Blazers. With 129,852 miles showing, with an admitted rollover, this K5's been around. But here's where it gets interesting. The sellers documented about $8,000 in recent maintenance and repairs, including some major work. New full dual exhaust from the manifold's back, new AC compressor and components, and the AC works, plus a full tune-up. That's the kind of documentation we love to see. All the power accessories are working. Windows, including that sometimes problematic rear tailgate window, locks, and it's got tilt steering. They've added a JVC stereo for some modern tunes, and it's rolling on factory rally wheels with 235/75/15 tires. There's even a Class C trailer hitch with a 4-pin connector. Now, being honest, there is one minor issue. The wipers work but don't auto-park. You've got to manually position them. But that's pretty minor in the grand scheme. At $24,900, yes, that's serious money for an E81 K5, but the market for clean, rust-free Blazers has absolutely exploded. The documented maintenance, working AC, and rust-free status make this one worth considering if you're in the market for a premium example. 13. Let's talk about this 1978 Ford Ranchero that's listed for around $9,000, and I'll keep it real with you. We're looking at a later model Ranchero here, from the final generation of Ford's car-based pickup. This one's showing 64,132 miles on the clock, and comes with a V8 engine paired to an automatic transmission, all wrapped in a beige exterior. Now, I've got to be honest, the seller's description is incredibly sparse here. While they're listing it in excellent condition, we're basically getting a VIN number and basic specs, without any real details about the vehicle's condition, maintenance history, or recent work. This is pretty much a dealer-style listing with just the bare essentials. These 78 Rancheros came with either a 302 or 351 V8, but the seller doesn't specify which one's under the hood. These final generation Rancheros shared their platform with the LTD2 and had that distinctive late 70s Ford styling that's becoming increasingly appreciated by collectors. At $9,000, you're in the ballpark for a decent 78 Ranchero in today's market, but you'll definitely want to get a lot more information and see it in person. These vehicles can have issues with rust in the bed area and around the rear window, so those are crucial areas to check. 14. Let's dive into this sweet 1964 El Camino that's up for grabs at $22,000, and there's a lot to love here. First off, we're looking at a 64 with a 327 V8 under the hood, paired with a 4-speed manual transmission. That's a dream combination for many collectors. The sellers stating both the engine, clutch, and trans are in great condition, which is exactly what you want to hear. This El Camino's got some serious upgrades. Power steering, power brakes with front disc conversion, a huge improvement over the original drums, and a rebuilt 10-bolt rear end. These are all thoughtful modifications that make it more enjoyable to drive while maintaining its classic character. The exterior features a custom two-tone brown paint job, and they've done some custom work on the interior as well. With 58,789 miles showing, this isn't a garage queen, but it's not worn out either. What's particularly appealing is the seller's claim that it runs and drives mint and is extremely clean inside, out, and underneath. The fact that they're inviting people to come hear it run shows confidence in the mechanical condition. At $22,000, while it's not cheap, you're in the right ballpark for a well-sorted 64 El Camino with desirable upgrades. These first-generation El Caminos, 1964 to 1967, are highly sought after, and this one appears to have the right combination of classic looks and practical improvements. 15. Let's check out this 1974 Chevy 4X4 that's listed for $7,500, and I'll give you the straight scoop on what we're looking at. First up, we should note that while the listing calls it a Silverado, the Silverado name wasn't actually used until 1975, so this would technically be a C10/K10 series truck. But hey, let's talk about what matters here. The seller's being pretty straightforward. They've got too many vehicles and this one needs to go. What's interesting is the work that's already been done. It's running a newer 350 V8 with some nice upgrades, including a Holley intake and Carter Competition 4-barrel carb, plus headers. Paired with a 4-speed manual transmission, that's a solid powertrain combo. For the off-road enthusiasts, it's sitting on a 6-inch lift kit with 10-inch aluminum wheels, which gives it some serious presence. The seller mentions the interior is in good shape, and they're throwing in some extras, including a better rear bumper. Now, there are a few things to note. There's no mention of the mileage, always something to check. And while it's listed in good condition, the seller's comment about taking it to the next level suggests there's still room for improvement. At $7,500, considering today's market for classic 4x4S and the upgrades already done, you're looking at a fair starting point. The combination of the newer 350 manual transmission and lift kit makes this an interesting project that you could either enjoy as is or continue developing. 16. Let's talk about this 1981 F100 that's up for grabs for $5,500. And there's some interesting stuff to unpack here. We're looking at a classic bull nose F100 powered by Ford's legendary straight-six engine. And let me tell you, they don't call these indestructible for nothing. These inline sixes are known for running forever with basic maintenance. It's paired with an automatic transmission and showing 126,560 miles, which isn't bad at all for these workhorses. The seller's done some recent work that's worth noting. New power brake booster, a freshly rebuilt carburetor, and they've just installed a new tow package. One cool feature is the dual gas tank setup with the dash switch, a super handy feature that Ford was known for. This one's got AC and heat, which is a big plus for these older trucks. though the seller doesn't mention if they're both working properly. The 6-foot bed configuration makes it more manageable for everyday use compared to the longer bed versions. At $5,500, considering today's market for classic Ford trucks, you're looking at a fair price for a running, driving example with some recent maintenance. These bull-nose F100s are gaining appreciation among collectors, particularly the ones that haven't been worked to death. Look, this isn't a show truck, but it appears to be a solid example of a classic Ford workhorse that's had some meaningful updates. These trucks are known for their simplicity and reliability, and with the straight 6, you're getting one of the most dependable engines Ford ever made. 17. We're diving into a classic ride that's up for grabs on Craigslist, a 1980 Chevy El Camino. This beauty is priced at $7,500, and from what the seller tells us, it seems to be in pretty good shape. Now let's break down the deets. This El Camino has a clean title, which is always a good sign. It's rocking a rebuilt V6 engine, so you can expect some solid power under the hood. The seller also mentions that it's got good tires, so you shouldn't have to worry about replacing those anytime soon. The odometer reads 65,482 miles, which is not bad at all for a vehicle from 1980. It's got an automatic transmission, making it a breeze to drive, and the paint color is a vibrant orange, perfect for turning heads on the road. Overall, based on the seller's description, this 1980 Chevy El Camino seems to be in good condition. However, as with any used vehicle purchase, it's always a good idea to go check it out in person, and maybe even bring along a mechanic friend to give it a once-over before making a final decision. If you're in the market for a classic pickup with some muscle car flair, this El Camino might just be the ride for you. Keep in mind that the seller has delivery available, which could be convenient if you're not able to pick it up yourself. 18. We're checking out a 1982 Chevy S10 that's up for grabs on Craigslist. This classic truck is going for $3,800, and according to the seller, it's in good condition. Now let's get into the nitty-gritty. This S10 has a clean title, which is always a plus. It's powered by a V6 engine, giving it some decent oomph. The seller mentions that it's got 235,000 miles on the odometer, which is pretty high. But hey, it's a truck from the 80s, so it's seen some action. The paint color is a classic red, which is always a popular choice for trucks. It's got an automatic transmission, making it easy to drive, and it's a rear-wheel drive vehicle, so you can expect some solid traction. One thing to note is that the seller has some extra parts included in the deal, like door panels and trim. That could come in handy if you're looking to do some restoration work or just want to have some spare parts on hand. Now here's the thing, 235,000 miles is no joke. It's important to keep in mind that a vehicle with that many miles is bound to have some wear and tear. The seller says it runs and drives, which is good, but it's always a smart idea to take it for a test drive and have a mechanic check it out before making a final decision. The seller also mentions that the price is firm, so if you're interested, you might not have much wiggle room for negotiation. 19. We've got a real treat for you. A 1970 Ford F100 short bed that's up for sale on Craigslist. This classic pickup is priced at $12,000, and from what the seller tells us, it's in good condition. Now let's dive into the details. First off, this F100 has a clean title, which is always a good sign. But what really sets this truck apart is what's under the hood. It's got a built Ford big block 460 engine that's putting out a whopping 450 horsepower. That's some serious muscle for a pickup truck. The engine has been seriously upgraded with performance valves, scorpion rockers, an Edelbrock high-performance cam and timing set, a Weiland aluminum intake manifold, and fuel injections. This thing is built for speed and power, but that's not all. The transmission is a TCIC 6 Street Fighter with an automatic manual valve body. So you've got the convenience of an automatic transmission with the control of a manual. Pretty sweet setup. The paint color is a sleek gray, which gives this classic truck a modern edge. And with rear-wheel drive and an 8-cylinder engine, you can expect some serious performance on the road. Now, it's important to keep in mind that this is a 50-year-old vehicle, so it's likely to have some wear and tear. The seller doesn't mention anything specific about the condition of the body or interior, so that's something you'll want to check out in person. 20. We've got a real gem to share with you. a 1981 Chevrolet Silverado that's up for grabs on Craigslist. This classic pickup is priced at $25,000, and based on the seller's description, it seems to be in excellent condition. Now let's get into the good stuff. First off, this Silverado has a clean title, which is always a great sign. It's powered by a V8 engine, so you know it's got plenty of muscle under the hood. And get this, the odometer only shows 58,129 miles. That's incredibly low mileage for a truck that's over 40 years old. The seller mentions that this Silverado is well maintained, which is evident from the low mileage and excellent condition. They also note that it has cold AC, which is a huge plus for those hot summer days. And if you're a fan of originality, you'll be happy to know that this truck is all original. One of the biggest selling points of this Silverado is that it has no rust. That's a rare find for a vehicle of this age, and it's a testament to how well it's been cared for over the years. The transmission is automatic, which makes it easy to drive, and with 8 cylinders you can expect plenty of power and torque. Now let's talk about the price. $25,000 is definitely on the high end for a classic pickup truck, but given the excellent condition, low mileage, and originality of this Silverado, it could be worth it for the right buyer. If you're in the market for a reliable, well-maintained classic truck, this one is definitely worth checking out.